Aliens left horrified. After human blood turned their steel into rust, reaches its pivotal moment when Colonel Zarioff, risking his own safety, stands alone before Captain Stewart in the human camp. The dried blood on the drone, still causing rust, sits on the negotiation table made of liquid metal. A silent threat. After tense moments of explanation, Stewart's hesitation breaks into cautious trust, forever changing interspecies relations. The orange sun cast long shadows across the rippling metal plains of Marnox, a world of red dust and liquid alloys, where the atmosphere shimmered with metallic particles that caught the light like a sea of microscopic mirrors. This was the frontier of the Crater Exploratory Force, and for Colonel Zarioff, it represented both tremendous opportunity and grave responsibility. Zarioff stood at the observation deck of Aurora Station, his translucent body absorbing the gentle orange sunlight that filtered through the reinforced dome. Unlike humans, the Crater did not possess solid, opaque bodies. Their organs and circulatory systems were visible through a crystalline outer layer that served as both skin and photosynthetic surface. Energy from light passed through them, powering their biological processes and giving them their characteristic luminescent glow. The human outpost remained silent. "Colonel," reported Lieutenant Vexel, her inner organs pulsing with a faint blue light that indicated concern. "No response to our standard greeting protocols." Zarioff's transparent fingers tapped against the console, creating small ripples in the liquid metal interface. "They may not recognize our communication patterns. Human technology differs significantly from ours. Or they may be deliberately ignoring us," suggested Major Kryn, who had just entered the command center. Unlike most Crater, whose organs displayed a harmonious arrangement of blues and greens, Kryn's internal structures often flashed with amber warnings, a sign of his perpetual state of alert. "Let's not jump to conclusions," Zarioff cautioned. "Remember our mission parameters. Establish peaceful contact, assess resource compatibility, and facilitate mutual exploration efforts." The Planetary Council was explicit. "We share this world with the humans, not contest it." Through the viewing portal, the distant human camp was barely visible, a collection of white, angular structures that contrasted sharply with the organic, flowing architecture of Aurora Station. The humans had arrived just 3 standard cycles before the Crater expedition, establishing their base on the far side of the liquid metal plains. "I've analyzed their camp layout," said Science Officer Lumi, projecting a holographic map from her crystalline hands. "They appear to be a standard Earth interstellar survey team, probably no more than 15 individuals. Their energy signatures suggest minimal weapons capability, primarily focused on research and resource assessment." Zarioff nodded, his internal processes glowing with a steady, confident blue. "Tomorrow, we'll send a maintenance drone as a preliminary contact measure, non-threatening, utilitarian in appearance. It will carry our greeting message and basic translation protocols." As the orange sun dipped below the metallic horizon, casting the station into a gentle twilight, Zarioff retired to his meditation chamber. Here, suspended in a nutrient-rich solution that allowed maximum light absorption, he contemplated the challenge ahead. The Crater had encountered 3 other sentient species in their interstellar explorations, but humans remained largely unknown, creatures of mystery and contradictions. Their biology alone was fascinating, opaque, fluid-filled, and remarkably adaptable. But it was their psychology that truly intrigued Zarioff, their unpredictable emotions, their capacity for both tremendous violence and extraordinary compassion. "Computer," he spoke to the liquid metal interface that surrounded his suspension tank. "Display all available data on human diplomatic protocols." As the information flowed around him in streams of light, Zarioff absorbed not just the data, but the energy of anticipation. Tomorrow would mark the first official contact between Crater and humans on Marnox. a new chapter in interspecies relations. He could only hope it would be written in cooperation, not conflict. The maintenance drone hovered 3 meters above the rippling surface of the liquid metal plains, its smooth, ovoid body reflecting the orange morning light. Engineer Melik made final adjustments to its sensory array, his transparent fingers moving with practiced precision. Communication module calibrated to human frequency range, he reported, his internal organs pulsing with a mix of excitement and apprehension. Translation matrix loaded, basic diplomatic protocols installed. Zarov surveyed the drone with approval. Remember, this is merely an introductory gesture. The drone will deliver our message, scan their exterior technology for compatibility, and return. No engagement, no sampling, no prolonged presence. What if they shoot it down? Kryn asked, his amber organs flashing with concern. The drone is unarmed and clearly marked with universal peace symbols, Zarov replied. Furthermore, our scans indicate the humans possess only basic signaling weapons, nothing designed for combat. This is a scientific expedition, major, not a military advance. The drone's propulsion system engaged with a soft hum, lifting it higher above the liquid metal surface. With a final command from Melik, it set off toward the human encampment, leaving gentle ripples in the metallic plain below. Now we wait, Zarov said, his voice calm despite the internal fluttering of his light processing organs, the Kretar equivalent of a racing heart. The drone's journey across the plains was uneventful, its sensors recording the fascinating interplay of solid and liquid metals that characterized Marnox's unique geology. As it approached the human camp, it slowed, according to protocol, hovering at a respectful distance while broadcasting a simple greeting tone on standard frequencies. At Aurora Station, Zarov and his team watched through the drone's visual feed. The human structures appeared even more angular up close, sharp edges and straight lines that contrasted with the flowing, organic architecture the Kretar preferred. For several minutes, there was no response from the camp. Then, a single figure emerged from the largest structure. Human detected, announced the station's AI. Biometric analysis suggests male, approximately 40 Earth years of age. No visible weapons. The human wore a white environment suit with a transparent helmet that revealed a face framed by short, dark hair. He carried a small, handheld device, which he pointed toward the drone. He's scanning us, Melik observed. Standard procedure. The human lowered his device and made a gesture that appeared to be welcoming, an upraised hand with palm facing outward. Then he turned and called back toward the structure. A second human emerged, smaller in stature, wearing a similar suit but with colorful markings on the sleeve. The communication protocols are activating, Melik reported excitedly. The drone is transmitting our greeting message. On the screen, they watched as the human's device displayed the Kretar's message. A simple, holographic image showing Aurora Station and its inhabitants, followed by universal mathematical symbols indicating peaceful intentions. The humans conferred briefly, their expressions hidden by the reflection on their helmet visors. Then the first human nodded and stepped forward, raising his device again. They're responding, Melik said, his entire body glowing brighter with excitement. But at that moment, something unexpected happened. A third human burst from one of the smaller structures, moving rapidly and erratically. Unlike the others, this one's body language suggested alarm. The human's arms waved frantically, and even without audio, it was clear they were shouting. Emotional distress detected, the station AI announced. Threat assessment protocols activating. No, override, Zarov commanded, suddenly alarmed. The drone is misinterpreting. But it was too late. The drone's basic AI had registered the human's frantic movements as a potential threat and initiated its defensive protocol. A simple maneuver designed to create distance between itself and perceived danger. The drone rose sharply, its motion startling the already agitated human. The humans stumbled backward, colliding with a piece of equipment. A bright flash erupted from the device in the human's hand. Not a weapon discharge, but what appeared to be an emergency signal flare. In the confusion, the drone executed an evasive pattern, swooping low over the humans. Its metal exterior grazed the arm of the third human, the panicked one, tearing the environment suit and breaking the skin beneath. "No!" Zarov's voice echoed through the command center as they watched droplets of red human blood spray upward, spattering across the drone's metallic surface. What happened next would forever change the relationship between Creator and humans. The blood, that simple, organic fluid, began to interact with the drone's metal exterior. Within seconds, the shining surface where the droplets had landed began to discolor, turning a rusty orange-brown. "What's happening?" Kryn demanded, his internal organs now flashing bright amber with alarm. "The metal is corroding," Lumi replied, her scientific mind racing to understand. "The human blood is causing a chemical reaction with our alloy." On the screen, the humans had backed away in obvious shock, staring at the drone as patches of its surface continued to rust and degrade. The drone, confused by the damage to its sensors, attempted to return to Aurora Station, its movements now erratic. "Recall it immediately," Zarov ordered, his voice tight with tension. The drone managed to travel halfway back before its systems failed completely, sending it plunging into the liquid metal plains with a splash that sent ripples across the entire field. In the command center, silence fell as the feed went dark. The implications were staggering. Human blood, a substance they carried within them at all times, was corrosive to Creator technology. A simple cut, a minor injury, could potentially destroy their equipment, their structures, perhaps even harm the Creator themselves. "This changes everything," Kryn said quietly, the amber glow of his organs now steady and intense. "The humans aren't just different, they're dangerous. Their very biology is a weapon against us." Zarov stared at the blank screen, his mind racing through scenarios and consequences. "We need more information before we jump to conclusions. Science Officer Lumi, begin analysis of the corrosion pattern. Engineer Melik, retrieve the drone if possible. And Major Kryn, not a word of this to the Planetary Council, until we understand exactly what we're dealing with." As his team rushed to comply, Zarov remained at the viewing portal, gazing out at the distant human camp. What had begun as a mission of discovery and cooperation now teetered on the edge of fear and mistrust. And somewhere out there, the humans were likely reaching similar conclusions about the strange aliens, whose technology couldn't even withstand their blood. The next 12 hours at Aurora Station passed in a flurry of activity and mounting tension. Engineer Melik had managed to retrieve the damaged drone using a remote-controlled collection unit, careful to avoid direct contact with the corroded sections. The drone now lay in a sealed laboratory, its once smooth surface pitted and discolored where the human blood had touched it. "The analysis is complete," Science Officer Lumi announced, projecting her findings onto the liquid metal display in the command center. Human blood contains a substance called hemoglobin, which transports oxygen through their bodies. When exposed to our metal alloys, the iron in hemoglobin catalyzes an oxidation reaction, essentially accelerating the rusting process by several thousand times. "So their blood is acidic to our metals?" Kryn asked, his internal organs still pulsing with amber concern. "Not acidic precisely," Lumi corrected, "but the combination of iron, oxygen, and the unique proteins in human blood creates a reaction that our metals cannot withstand. Our technology, our structures, even the liquid metal interface we use for communication, all vulnerable to a few drops of human fluid." The implications hung in the air like a toxic cloud. The Creator had built their entire civilization around metallic technology. Their flowing, liquid metal interfaces were the foundation of their communication systems, their data storage, their artistic expression. Even their spacecraft incorporated living metal components that responded to thought and touch. "We need to report this to the Planetary Council immediately," Kryn insisted. "Request emergency evacuation protocols. This planet is fundamentally hostile to Creator presence if humans are to remain." Zaroff had been silent, absorbing the information with the patience of a seasoned diplomat. Now he turned from the viewing portal, his transparent body glowing with a steady, determined blue. "No," he said firmly, "not yet. Colonel, with all due respect—" "The Council will panic," Zaroff interrupted. "They'll order immediate withdrawal, possibly even aggressive countermeasures. This discovery is shocking, yes, but it's also incomplete. We don't yet know if the humans are aware of this effect. We don't know if there are simple countermeasures. We don't know if this is a threat or merely a biological incompatibility that can be managed." "Managed?" Kryn's internal organs flashed brighter. "Their very existence is corrosive to ours." "And yet they've been on this planet for 3 cycles without incident," Zaroff countered. "They've established a base, conducted surveys, probably even encountered our abandoned equipment. If they meant us harm, they could have weaponized this biological effect already." Lumi's transparent fingers manipulated the data display, bringing up thermal images of the human camp. "The Colonel has a point. Their activity patterns suggest normal research operations, not military preparations. And look here, they've actually established a small protective perimeter around our previous survey markers. That suggests respect, not hostility." Kryn wasn't convinced. "Biological incompatibility on this scale cannot be ignored. The risk is too great." "I'm not suggesting we ignore it," Zaroff said, his voice softening. "I'm suggesting we investigate further before we sound an alarm that cannot be unrung. The Creator-Human Cooperative Exploration Treaty took 50 Earth years to negotiate. Do we really want to be the ones who shatter it over a misunderstanding?" The liquid metal interface rippled as Zaroff brought up the treaty text. The flowing symbols, highlighting key passages about mutual respect and collaborative problem-solving. "What do you propose, Colonel?" asked Lieutenant Vexil, who had been quietly monitoring communications. "A direct approach," Zaroff replied. "I will personally lead a small team to establish proper diplomatic contact with the humans. We'll use protective measures based on Lumi's analysis, and we'll be transparent about our concerns. If this biological incompatibility is as significant as it appears, both species need to address it together." "That's an unnecessary risk," Kryn objected. "At minimum, we should conduct remote negotiations." "Remote negotiations breed suspicion," Zaroff countered. "They'll wonder why we refuse face-to-face contact. No, this requires personal courage and transparency, the foundational values of Creator diplomacy." After further debate, a compromise was reached. Zaroff would lead a diplomatic mission the following day, but only after implementing extensive protective measures and establishing a clear evacuation protocol. The Planetary Council would be informed of a biological discovery requiring further investigation, technically true, but without the alarm that would trigger an immediate withdrawal order. As the others departed to make preparations, Zaroff remained in the command center, studying the footage of the drone incident. He watched again as the human blood made contact with the metal, as the corrosion spread like a living thing across the once pristine surface. It was frightening. Yes, but also fascinating. 2 species, both intelligent, both explorers. Yet their basic biology created such profound challenges to coexistence. "Computer," he said softly, "display all historical records of first contact scenarios that involved biological incompatibility." As the data flowed around him, Zaroff steeled himself for the task ahead. Tomorrow would determine whether Cretar and humans could overcome their natural differences, or whether Marnox would become yet another battlefield in the long, sad history of species who could not find common ground. Morning came to Marnox in a blaze of orange light that set the metal plains shimmering. Zarov stood before his team in the preparation chamber, his transparent body now partially covered by a thin, protective film that would shield him from direct contact with human biological material. Remember, our objective is understanding, not confrontation, he reminded them. We acknowledge the biological challenge. We express our concern. But we approach this as scientists and diplomats, not as victims or accusers. Engineer Melik made final adjustments to Zaryov's protective covering. The film will maintain your photosynthetic capabilities while providing a barrier against human fluids. But it's not designed for prolonged exposure. Colonel, if there's any breach, the emergency transport will activate automatically. Kryn, who had reluctantly agreed to remain at Aurora Station as backup, reviewed the communication protocols one last time. Continuous feed, full transparency. At the first sign of hostility or misunderstanding, we extract you immediately. Zarov nodded, his internal organs glowing with a steady, determined blue. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. The diplomatic team was small, just Zarov, Science Officer Lumi, and 2 security specialists equipped with non-lethal containment fields. They would travel in an open transport vehicle, clearly visible and obviously unarmed, following the ancient diplomatic principle that vulnerability often breeds more trust than strength. As they prepared to depart, Lieutenant Vexel approached with a last-minute update. Colonel, our atmospheric sensors are detecting unusual particulate concentrations to the east. There may be a liquid metal dust storm forming. Timeline, Zarov asked, concerned but not deterred. 3 hours at minimum before it reaches either encampment. Enough time for initial contact, but perhaps not for extended negotiations. Then we'll be efficient. Zarov decided. Launch the communication beacon. Inform the humans we're approaching under diplomatic protocol. The beacon, a small, glowing sphere of crater design, shot upward from Aurora Station, arcing high over the metal plains before descending toward the human camp. It would emit universal peace signals and basic translational data, preparing the way for the delegation's arrival. As the transport vehicle glided over the rippling metal surface, Zarov took a moment to appreciate the alien beauty of Marnox. The planet existed in a perpetual state of metallic flux, solid landmasses surrounded by seas of liquid alloy, with plains of semi-solid metal that shifted and flowed according to temperature and magnetic influences. It was this unique geology that had attracted both species, rich in rare elements essential for advanced technology. Approaching visual range of human encampment, announced one of the security specialists. They appear to be preparing for our arrival. Through the forward viewport, Zarov could see movement in the human camp. Several figures had emerged from the structures, arranging themselves in what appeared to be a formal reception line. A single figure stood slightly ahead of the others, presumably their leader. They received our message, Lumi observed, her transparent body glowing with cautious optimism. And they're following standard diplomatic protocol. Or setting a trap, muttered one of the security specialists, earning a sharp look from Zarov. We proceed as planned, the colonel said firmly. Open communication channels. The transport slowed as it approached the designated neutral zone, a flat expanse of solid ground midway between the human camp and the rippling metal plains. Here, where the geology transitioned from liquid to solid, they would make their stand for understanding. As the transport settled onto the ground with a soft hiss, Zarov caught his first clear glimpse of the human delegation. 5 individuals stood waiting, wearing their white environmental suits, but with helmets removed, a gesture of trust that didn't go unnoticed. The leader was a tall human with dark skin and close-cropped hair, his posture straight and formal. Ready your translation devices, Zarov instructed, as the transport's door slid open. Remember, direct eye contact is important to humans, even though it has no special significance to us. And no matter what happens, remain calm. Our emotional responses are visible through our bodies. They will read our intentions directly through our biological reactions. With that final reminder, Zaraof stepped from the transport, his transparent form catching the orange sunlight and refracting it in gentle patterns across the ground. Behind him, Lumi and the security team followed at a respectful distance. For a moment, neither delegation moved. Then, with deliberate slowness, the human leader stepped forward, one hand raised in what Zaraof recognized as a greeting gesture. "Welcome to Earth Outpost Helios," the human said, his voice carried clearly through the thin Marnock's atmosphere. "I am Captain James Stewart, commanding officer of this research installation." Zaraof's translation device processed the words with only a slight delay. He raised his own transparent hand in mirror of the human gesture. "Greetings, Captain Stewart. I am Colonel Zaraof of the Creator Exploratory Force. We come in peace and with respect for your presence on Marnox." Stewart nodded, his dark eyes studying Zaraof's transparent form with undisguised fascination. "We've been expecting contact since we detected your arrival 3 days ago. Though I must admit, your appearance is not what our briefings led us to expect." "Biology often defies expectation," Zaraof replied diplomatically. "As we have recently discovered in our encounter with your species." A flicker of tension passed over Stewart's face. "You're referring to the drone incident yesterday?" "Yes. An unfortunate misunderstanding that has revealed a significant biological incompatibility between our species." Stewart's posture shifted slightly, a defensive adjustment that Zaraof's cultural training helped him identify. "If you're referring to the damage your drone caused to my engineer, I can assure you he's recovering well. The laceration was minor." "I am relieved to hear that," Zaraof said sincerely, his internal organs pulsing with a gentle green light that signified honesty. "However, it is not your engineer's injury that concerns us, but rather the effect his blood had upon our technology." Stewart's expression changed to one of confusion. "Effect? I'm not sure I understand." Zaraof turned and signaled to Lumi, who approached carrying a sealed, transparent container. Inside was a small section of the damaged drone, the metal surface visibly corroded and discolored. "This is what happened when your engineer's blood made contact with our metal alloy," Zaraof explained, holding the container where Stewart could clearly see it. "A rapid oxidation reaction, what you would call rusting, accelerated by several thousand times." Stewart stared at the corroded metal, then back at Zaraof's transparent form. Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed by a complex mixture of emotions that played across his face too quickly for Zaraof to interpret. "You're telling me that human blood is corrosive to your technology?" Stewart asked slowly. "Not just our technology, Captain. The liquid metal that forms the basis of our communication systems, our data storage, potentially even our transportation networks. The same liquid metal that covers vast portions of this planet's surface." Stewart turned to confer briefly with one of his team, a human with gray hair and glasses who wore a suit marked with medical symbols. When he turned back to Zaraof, his expression was grave. "Colonel, I think we need to discuss this in greater detail. Would you and your team join us inside our facility? We have a conference room designed for interspecies meetings." It was a critical moment. Entering the human structure would place them at a tactical disadvantage, surrounded by unfamiliar technology and potentially harmful biological material. But refusing would signal distrust at this crucial juncture. "We would be honored," Zaraof decided, his internal organs maintaining their steady blue glow, despite the risk. "However, I must ask that certain precautions be observed regarding biological containment." Stewart nodded solemnly. "Of course. We'll follow whatever protocols you require. This is unprecedented in our experience. But if we're to share this world, we need to understand the challenges fully." As the combined delegation moved toward the human facility, Zaroff caught sight of the eastern horizon, where dark clouds were gathering. The metal dust storm was approaching faster than predicted, its leading edge already visible as a shimmering curtain in the distance. Time was running short, but perhaps that was for the best. The most honest conversations often happened under pressure, when there was no time for anything but truth. The human conference room was a study in contrasts, utilitarian in design, with straight edges and hard surfaces that felt alien to creator sensibilities, yet decorated with images of Earth landscapes that featured flowing water and organic shapes. Zaroff found the juxtaposition fascinating, another piece in the puzzle of understanding these complex beings. Captain Stewart had arranged the seating to place himself directly opposite Zaroff, with their respective teams flanking them on either side. On the table between them sat the sealed container with the corroded drone fragment, a silent reminder of the issue at hand. "Before we begin formal discussions," Stewart said, "I'd like to introduce Dr. Eleanor Chen, our Chief Medical Officer, and Dr. Marcus Rivera, our xenobiologist. They may be able to offer insights into this biological incompatibility." Zaroff nodded respectfully to each human, noting the absence of the engineer whose blood had caused the incident. Perhaps they were keeping him isolated as a precaution, a sensible measure that Zaroff appreciated. "With me is Science Officer Lumi, our biological systems specialist," Zaroff replied. "The security personnel will remain outside, as we agreed." Stewart leaned forward, his hands clasped on the table, a gesture Zaroff recognized as indicating seriousness of purpose. "Colonel, I want to assure you that yesterday's incident was completely unintentional. Engineer Vasquez was operating a signal flare when your drone appeared. He has a history of anxiety in unfamiliar situations, and the sudden appearance of unknown technology triggered a panic response. He was attempting to signal our medical team, not threaten your drone." "We understand that," Zaroff assured him, his transparent body glowing with sincere blue light. "Our drone's response was equally unintentional, a basic defensive protocol triggered by misinterpreted signals. We bear no ill will toward Engineer Vasquez." Dr. Rivera, the xenobiologist, spoke up. "What we don't understand is the severity of the reaction between our blood and your metal. It's unprecedented in our experience with other materials." Science Officer Lumi activated a small holographic projector, displaying molecular structures in the air between them. "Human blood contains a protein called hemoglobin, which carries oxygen through your bodies. The iron in this hemoglobin, combined with certain proteins and the oxygen itself, creates a catalytic reaction with our metal alloys, essentially accelerating the natural oxidation process by several thousand times." "Fascinating," Dr. Rivera murmured, studying the holographic display. "So it's not that our blood is acidic or corrosive in the conventional sense." "No," Lumi confirmed. "It's a specific molecular incompatibility. Your blood essentially transforms our metals into rust almost instantly." Dr. Chen frowned, her analytical mind clearly racing. "This raises serious concerns about cohabitation. If a simple cut or scrape could damage your technology, how could we possibly work together safely?" The question hung in the air, giving voice to the fear that had been growing in both camps. Zaroff felt his internal organs pulse with a mixture of concern and determination. "That," he said quietly, "is precisely why I chose to come in person. Despite the risks, some challenges can only be overcome through direct engagement." Stewart studied Zaroff's transparent form with newfound respect. "You took a significant personal risk coming here." "As did you, removing your helmets and inviting us inside." Zaroff acknowledged. "Courage recognizes courage, Captain." A small smile crossed Stewart's face, the first genuine expression of warmth since their meeting began. "Then let's approach this as the scientists and explorers we are, not as potential adversaries. Dr. Chen, what are your thoughts on mitigation strategies?" The medical officer tapped her tablet thoughtfully. We could develop protocols to minimize exposure risks, sealed environments, separate work zones, specialized equipment designed to resist the reaction. It would limit direct collaboration, but it could work. And we could adapt our protective technologies, Lumi added. The film covering Colonel Zarov's body is a first attempt, but we could develop more sophisticated barriers. As they discussed potential solutions, Zarov noticed the light in the room dimming. Through the window, he could see the metal dust storm approaching rapidly, its swirling clouds now much closer than predicted. "Captain," he interrupted, "I'm concerned about the approaching storm. Our atmospheric models suggested we had more time, but it appears to be accelerating." Stewart glanced outside, his expression turning grim. "You're right. That's moving much faster than our weather system predicted. Those dust particles, they're not dangerous to your people, are they?" "Not inherently," Zarov replied. "But in high concentrations, they can interfere with our photosynthetic processes. More concerning is what they might do to your respiratory systems if your environmental suits aren't properly sealed." "We should conclude this initial meeting," Stewart decided. "My team needs to secure our sensitive equipment before the storm hits. Colonel, would you and your officer like to remain here until it passes? Our facility is hardened against these conditions." It was another moment of trust. Accepting shelter within the human structure would place them at greater risk of biological exposure. But attempting to return to Aurora Station in the storm carried its own dangers. "We accept your offer with gratitude," Zarov decided. "And perhaps we can use this time to continue our discussions in a less formal setting. The storm may be an inconvenience, but it also provides an opportunity to deepen our understanding." As the humans hurried to prepare for the storm, Zarov sent a coded message to Aurora Station, informing Kryn of their decision to shelter in place. The Major would not be pleased, but Zarov was increasingly convinced that this approach, direct, personal, vulnerable, was the only way forward. Outside, the first waves of metallic dust began to strike the facility, creating a musical patter against the reinforced windows. Soon, visibility dropped to near zero as the storm enveloped the human outpost in a swirling cloud of microscopic metal particles. Trapped together by circumstance, the representatives of two fundamentally incompatible biologies were about to learn whether understanding could overcome fear. The metal dust storm raged outside, transforming the landscape into a swirling chaos of glittering particles that reduced visibility to mere meters. Inside the human facility, an unexpected intimacy had developed as the two species found themselves confined together, forced to confront their differences and similarities in close quarters. Captain Stewart had converted the conference room into a temporary living space, providing specialized lighting that would support the creators' photosynthetic needs while they waited out the storm. Zarov and Lumi sat beneath these lights, their transparent bodies absorbing the energy with visible gratitude. "Your consideration is appreciated," Zarov said as Stewart returned with a container of clear liquid. "The storm has disrupted our normal energy absorption cycles." "It seemed the least we could do," Stewart replied, setting the container on the table. "This is purified water. Our records indicate your species can supplement energy intake through liquid absorption. I apologize if that's incorrect. Our information on creator biology is clearly incomplete." "Your information is accurate, though limited," Zarov confirmed, extending a transparent appendage to touch the water's surface. His skin rippled slightly as it absorbed the molecules directly, just as our understanding of human biology proved inadequate. Stewart watched the absorption process with undisguised fascination. "It's remarkable how differently our species evolved. You draw energy directly from light and simple molecules, while we consume complex organic matter and extract energy through digestion. Different solutions to the same fundamental challenge," Lumi observed, her scientific curiosity overcoming her earlier caution. The maintenance of complex biological systems requires energy input. The method of acquisition is merely an evolutionary adaptation to environmental conditions. Dr. Chen entered the room, carrying a small device that Zaroff recognized as a biological scanner. "Colonel, with your permission, I'd like to take some readings of your physiological processes. It might help us better understand the compatibility issues we're facing." Zaroff hesitated only briefly before nodding. "Proceed. Doctor, knowledge is our best weapon against misunderstanding." As Chen moved the scanner around Zaroff's transparent form, the colonel noticed Dr. Rivera working intently at a side table, examining the corroded drone fragment under a microscopic imaging device. "Have you discovered something of interest, Dr. Rivera?" Zaroff inquired. The xenobiologist looked up, his expression animated with scientific excitement. "Potentially, yes. I've been analyzing the corrosion pattern at the molecular level, and there's something unusual about the reaction kinetics. It's not just accelerated oxidation. There appears to be a secondary process involving the protein structures in our hemoglobin." Lumi's interest was immediately piqued. She moved to join Rivera at the microscope, her own transparent form bending to examine the images. "May I?" Rivera stepped aside respectfully. "Please. A fresh perspective might catch something I've missed." As the two scientists fell into an intense technical discussion, Zaroff found himself alone with Stewart and Chen. A moment of awkward silence passed before Stewart spoke. "While they work on the scientific puzzle, perhaps we should address the diplomatic one," the captain suggested. "Regardless of the biological challenges, our government sent us here with explicit instructions to establish cooperative relations. How do we move forward with that mandate, given these complications?" Zaroff's internal organs pulsed thoughtfully. "The Planetary Council will likely recommend withdrawal when they learn the full extent of the incompatibility. They are cautious by nature, and the potential risks to our technology are significant. And my superiors might reach similar conclusions." Stewart acknowledged. "Earth has had difficult experiences with first contact scenarios in the past." "As have the Creator," Zaroff said quietly. "Which is precisely why I believe we must find a solution here, between us, before our respective authorities make decisions based on fear rather than facts." Dr. Chen set down her scanner, her expression serious. "The biological data I'm collecting suggests your species' vulnerability isn't limited to our blood. Other bodily fluids, perspiration, saliva, even respiratory moisture, contain trace elements that could potentially trigger similar reactions, though perhaps less severe." "And your vulnerability isn't limited to our drone alloys," came Lumi's voice from the research table. She and Rivera had apparently reached a significant conclusion. Dr. Rivera's microscopy confirms that the reaction occurs with all ferrocrystalline structures that incorporate quantum alignment patterns, which includes virtually all Creator technology, our communication systems, and even some of our medical devices. The implications settled heavily over the room. The incompatibility was even more fundamental than they had initially feared. Stewart ran a hand over his face, a human gesture of frustration that Zaroff had learned to recognize. "So, we're talking about complete segregation? Separate facilities? Separate exploration zones? Minimal contact?" "That would be the safest approach," Dr. Chen confirmed reluctantly. "But it would also undermine the entire purpose of our mission here: collaborative exploration and shared discovery." A sudden thought occurred to Zaroff, his transparent body brightening with inspiration. "Perhaps we're approaching this from the wrong direction. Instead of focusing on how to keep our biologies separated, what if we looked for ways to neutralize the reaction itself?" Rivera looked up sharply. "Like an inhibitor compound? Something that could prevent the catalytic process from initiating?" "Exactly," Zaroff confirmed. "If we could develop a treatment for your metals that renders them resistant to the oxidation effect of human blood, or a non-harmful additive for human environmental systems that neutralizes the catalytic proteins. It's worth investigating, Chen agreed, already reaching for her tablet to make notes. We have extensive medical supplies that include various enzyme inhibitors and catalytic blockers. Some might be adaptable to this purpose. And we have advanced material science technologies, Lumi added. Our liquid metal interfaces incorporate self-healing properties that might be modified to resist the oxidation effect. For the first time since the drone incident, a sense of genuine hope filled the room. Not just diplomatic platitudes or cautious cooperation, but the possibility of a real solution that would allow true collaboration between their species. Stewart smiled, the expression transforming his serious face. This is why we explore, isn't it? To face the unknown, discover the unexpected, and solve the seemingly unsolvable. It is the core of creator philosophy as well, Zaroff agreed, his internal organs glowing with a warm green light that signified optimism. The universe presents challenges not to divide us, but to invite us to overcome them together. Outside, the metal dust storm continued to howl, but within the human facility, a different kind of energy was building. The collaborative spirit of scientific inquiry that transcended biological differences and historical caution. Zaroff glanced at the corroded drone fragment, still sitting in its sealed container. What had begun as a symbol of their incompatibility might yet become the catalyst for an unprecedented partnership. The hours passed in a flurry of scientific experimentation and philosophical discussion. As the metal dust storm gradually subsided outside, the impromptu research team inside the human facility made remarkable progress. Dr. Rivera and Science Officer Lumi had converted a corner of the conference room into a makeshift laboratory, combining human analytical equipment with creator holographic modeling technology. They worked side by side, their fundamental biological differences forgotten in the shared language of scientific inquiry. The neutralizing compound is showing promise in simulation, Lumi reported, her transparent form glowing with excitement as she manipulated a holographic molecular model. A synthetic polymer that bonds to the iron in hemoglobin without affecting its oxygen-carrying capacity. The challenge will be delivery method, Rivera mused, studying the model. It would need to be present in our environmental systems without causing respiratory irritation. Perhaps an aerosolized form, suggested Dr. Chen, who had been monitoring their progress. Something that could be incorporated into our air filtration systems, present in our immediate environment, but not directly introduced to our bloodstream. At the main table, Zaroff and Captain Stewart had moved from technical solutions to broader implications, discussing how their discoveries might reshape the Creator-Human Exploration Treaty. The Planetary Council will require extensive testing before they fully commit to cohabitation, Zaroff explained. But preliminary results may be enough to prevent an immediate withdrawal order. And Earth Command will want assurances that the neutralizing compound poses no long-term health risks to humans, Stewart added, though having Dr. Chen's endorsement will carry significant weight. A gentle chime from Stewart's communication device interrupted their conversation. The captain checked the display, his expression brightening. Good news, the storm has passed, and our atmospheric sensors are showing rapid clearance. We should have full visibility within the hour. Zaroff felt both relief and a curious reluctance. The storm had forced an intimacy that might otherwise have taken months to develop, accelerating their understanding of each other in ways that formal diplomacy never could. Once communications are restored, I will need to report our findings to Aurora Station, he said. Major Kryn will be concerned about our prolonged silence. Stewart smiled wryly. I imagine he's already planning a rescue mission. That would be consistent with his character, Zaroff agreed, his internal organs pulsing with amusement. Kryn sees threats where I see opportunities. It makes him an excellent security officer, if sometimes an overly cautious one. Every command team needs that balance, Stewart observed. My executive officer, Commander Patel, serves a similar function, always preparing for worst-case scenarios while I focus on best-case outcomes. Their conversation was interrupted by an excited exclamation from the research corner. Rivera was holding up a small vial containing a clear liquid with a faint bluish tint. "We've done it," he announced triumphantly. "A prototype neutralizing agent. It's crude, but the molecular structure should bind to the catalytic elements in human blood without affecting either species' biology." Lumi's transparent body was glowing brighter than Zarioff had ever seen, her internal organs pulsing with rapid, excited rhythms. The simulation shows a 94% reduction in oxidation potential. Not perfect, but significant enough to prevent catastrophic damage to Creedar technology from incidental exposure. "We need to test it," Chen cautioned, ever the methodical scientist. "Simulations are promising, but real-world application could introduce variables we haven't accounted for." A moment of silence fell as the implications became clear. Testing would require actual human blood to come in contact with Creedar metal in the presence of the neutralizing agent. A potentially risky experiment, given the stakes involved. "I volunteer," Stewart said, standing up from the table. "As commanding officer, it's my responsibility to assume any risks associated with this mission. And I will provide the technological component," Zarioff added without hesitation. "As the ranking Creedar representative, it is only fitting that I match your courage, Captain." The testing apparatus was simple but elegant. A small sample of liquid metal, similar to the interface technology used throughout Aurora Station, was placed in a sealed container with sensors to monitor its molecular integrity. Dr. Chen prepared a sterile lancet to draw a small amount of blood from Stewart's fingertip, while Rivera readied the neutralizing compound. "The procedure will be as follows," Lumi explained, her scientific precision bringing clarity to the tense moment. "First, we will apply the neutralizing agent to the liquid metal sample. Then, we will introduce Captain Stewart's blood to the treated metal. The sensors will provide real-time data on any oxidation reactions. If successful, this demonstration will provide compelling evidence for our respective authorities," Zarioff added. "Visual documentation of the test will be particularly important for the Planetary Council, who may otherwise find our claims difficult to believe." Stewart nodded, extending his hand as Chen prepared the lancet. "Let's make history, Colonel. Preferably the kind where different species learn to coexist rather than destroy each other." The test proceeded methodically. First, the neutralizing compound was applied to the liquid metal, creating a barely perceptible film across its shimmering surface. Then, with careful precision, Dr. Chen pricked Stewart's finger and collected a single drop of blood in a sterile pipette. "Introducing human blood sample now," Rivera announced, his voice tense with anticipation as Chen transferred the blood onto the treated metal surface. For a breathless moment, nothing happened. The red droplet sat on the silvery surface, maintaining its shape and color. No corrosion spread, no rust formed, no catastrophic reaction ensued. "Initial results appear positive," Lumi reported, studying the sensor readings. "Oxidation potential at 7%, well within tolerable parameters for our technology." A collective sigh of relief filled the room. It wasn't a perfect solution. Some minimal reaction was still occurring, but it represented a monumental breakthrough in their understanding of the biological incompatibility. "We'll need to refine the formula," Rivera cautioned, "and conduct longer-term exposure tests. But as a proof of concept, it's remarkable," Zarioff finished, his transparent body glowing with a deep blue light that signified profound satisfaction. Not just the scientific achievement, but what it represents. Two fundamentally different biologies, potentially harmful to each other, finding a way to coexist through cooperation and understanding. Stewart's eyes met Zarioff's, a moment of connection that transcended their physical differences. I believe there's a lesson in that, Colonel, one that extends far beyond the boundaries of Marnox. Indeed, Zaroff agreed softly. Now we must convince our respective authorities that this approach, adaptation rather than separation, is the wisest path forward. As if on cue, both Stewart's communicator and Zarioff's translation device activated simultaneously. Communications had been restored as the last of the metal dust cleared from the atmosphere. "Captain Stewart," came a voice from the human device. "Commander Patel here. Storm's cleared and we're reading all systems normal. Please confirm your status." At the same moment, Major Krynn's concerned tones emerged from Zaroff's translator. "Colonel, Aurora Station has re-established sensor contact. We're preparing a retrieval team unless you advise otherwise." Stewart and Zaroff exchanged glances. Then each responded to their respective officers with identical words. "Stand down, alert status. Situation under control. Preparing to transmit significant scientific breakthrough data." As the research team began organizing their findings for transmission, Zaroff moved to the facility's viewport, gazing out at the now clear Marnox landscape. The metal plains shimmered in the orange sunlight, beautiful and alien and full of promise. What had begun in fear, a horror at the corrosive power of human blood against Cretar technology, had transformed into something unexpected, a testament to the power of scientific cooperation and diplomatic courage. The challenge was far from over. Protocols would need to be established, the neutralizing compound refined, living arrangements carefully designed. But the fundamental question had been answered. Cretar and humans could share Marnox, despite their biological incompatibilities, if they chose understanding over fear. "Colonel," Stewart called from across the room, "Aurora Station is requesting visual confirmation of your safety. Shall we send them an image of our research team at work?" Zaroff turned from the viewport, his transparent form glowing with quiet pride. "An excellent suggestion, Captain. Let them see not just that we are safe, but why we are safe, because we chose to face our differences together, rather than retreat from them in fear." As the human camera captured the image, Cretar and human scientists working side by side, the neutralized blood sample visible in the foreground, Zaroff knew it would become more than documentation. It would become a symbol of what was possible when intelligent species refused to let biology determine destiny. The formal signing ceremony took place one standard cycle later, on the neutral ground between Aurora Station and the human outpost. A simple platform had been constructed from local stone, one of the few materials compatible with both species biology, and decorated with symbolic elements from both cultures. Zaroff stood on one side of the ceremonial table, Captain Stewart on the other. Behind each leader, their respective teams were arranged in formal positions, with Major Kryn and Commander Patel serving as official witnesses. "The Marnox Cohabitation Protocol," Zaroff announced, his voice carrying clearly across the gathered assembly, "represents not just a scientific solution to a biological challenge, but a philosophical commitment to cooperation over conflict." The document itself was a technological marvel, written in specialized ink on a synthetic material developed by the Joint Research Team. It could be handled safely by both species without risk of degradation or contamination. "Through this agreement," Stewart continued, "we established designated zones for each species' primary activities, shared research facilities with appropriate biological safeguards, and protocols for emergency response in case of accidental exposure." The most significant element of the protocol was the implementation of the neutralizing compound, now refined to 99% effectiveness throughout both settlements. Human living quarters would maintain a constant low-level presence of the agent in their air filtration systems, while Cretar technology had been treated with a protective coating that resisted oxidation, even when direct contact with human biological material occurred. "While our respective governments continue to evaluate the long-term implications of our discovery," Zaroff said, "this provisional agreement allows our missions to proceed as intended, exploring and understanding Marnox together, rather than in isolation from one another. With ceremonial precision, both leaders applied their signatures to the document, Stewart with traditional ink, Zaroff with a specialized light imprinting tool that encoded his unique biological pattern into the material. As they completed the signing, a spontaneous applause broke out from the human contingent. The Creator, who expressed approval through internal bioluminescence, glowed with harmonious blue and green patterns that rippled through their transparent bodies in waves of light. "Major Kryn," Zaroff said, turning to his security officer, "would you do us the honor of transmitting the signed protocol to the Planetary Council?" Kryn, whose internal organs had gradually shifted from anxious amber to a more settled blue-green over the past cycle, nodded respectfully. "With pleasure, Colonel. And may I add my personal endorsement of the agreement? My initial concerns have been addressed comprehensively by the safeguards put in place." "Commander Patel," Stewart said to his executive officer, "please prepare the diplomatic packet for Earth Command, including our full research findings and risk assessment." "Already prepared, Captain," Patel replied with efficient pride, "including Dr. Chen and Dr. Rivera's detailed analysis of the neutralizing compound's long-term stability projections." With the formal ceremony complete, the gathering transitioned to a more relaxed scientific exchange. Human and Creator specialists formed small discussion groups, sharing data and observations about Marnox's unique properties. Engineers from both teams demonstrated prototype equipment designed for joint exploration efforts, tools that could be operated safely by either species without risk of biological contamination. As the day progressed, Zaroff found a moment of quiet reflection with Stewart at the edge of the gathering, looking out over the metallic plains that stretched to the horizon. "The rust from that first encounter," Zaroff said thoughtfully. "We've preserved it in a special containment field at Aurora Station, a reminder of how easily misunderstanding can corrode relations between different beings." Stewart nodded, watching the orange sunlight play across the liquid metal surface. "And a reminder of how science and diplomacy can overcome even the most fundamental incompatibilities. My team has kept the repaired drone as our own memorial, both to what went wrong and what we managed to make right. The Planetary Council will likely send additional research teams once they review our findings," Zaroff noted. "They'll want to verify our results independently, of course, but I believe they'll ultimately endorse our approach." "Earth will do the same," Stewart agreed. "Though bureaucracy moves slowly in both our civilizations, it seems." A comfortable silence fell between them. Two leaders from radically different biologies who had found common ground, not despite their differences, but because they had been willing to face those differences directly. In the distance, the first joint exploration team was preparing to depart, a mixed group of human and Creator scientists who would survey the mountain ranges to the north, testing their new protocols in the field. Their vehicle, a hybrid of technologies from both species, represented the physical embodiment of their cooperation. "One solar cycle," Zaroff said suddenly. "We should meet again in one solar cycle to assess our progress and expand the protocol if warranted." Stewart smiled, extending his hand in the human gesture of agreement. "One solar cycle it is, Colonel, though I suspect we'll have many more meetings before then, given the pace of our joint research." Zaroff's transparent hand met Stewart's opaque one, in careful, protected contact, symbolic of their new relationship, different in fundamental ways, potentially harmful to each other without proper precautions, yet capable of connection when approached with wisdom and respect. As the orange sun began its descent toward the metallic horizon, casting long shadows across the plains, the gathered scientists and diplomats continued their work, two species united not by common biology, but by common purpose. The horror of that first encounter, when human blood had turned Creator steel to rust, had transformed into something unexpected. the foundation of understanding that would allow both species to thrive on Marnox. Together, yet apart. Separate but connected through the power of scientific ingenuity and diplomatic courage. In the annals of interspecies relations, the Marnox cohabitation protocol would come to be seen as a turning point, proof that biological incompatibility need not lead to conflict, that differences could be managed through intelligence and goodwill, and that the universe was vast enough to accommodate all manner of life, even when that life took forms that seemed fundamentally opposed to one another. And it had begun with a drop of blood, a patch of rust, and the courage to face fear directly rather than retreat from it in panic. As Zaroff watched the joint expedition depart, his transparent body glowing with quiet pride, he knew that the true exploration, the journey toward genuine understanding between different forms of intelligence, was only just beginning.